All right, I think we are live. Yes, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome, Minders. Welcome, Owing's art fans out there. And welcome to all those who are here to meet and talk to Mark Campbell, who has the MD Campbell channel here on YouTube. It's a fairly new channel. And all we're going to do today is just kind of hang out, relax, and talk about art. Talk about watercolor, hopefully. Talk about Mark and some of the things that he's bringing to YouTube, and maybe get him some subscribers. So I'll start by just saying I first found out about Mark from Marty. And when Marty and I did our last broadcast, Mark was hanging out in the chat, kind of helping out with some people on questions and also throwing out some of his own. And, you know, afterwards we connected through comments, and Marty suggested I watch one of his videos about what to do with old watercolor journals or old sketchbooks, I think it was. And that was great. I love that. So that was kind of my introduction. And then through time, we've sort of connected. Mark and I share a few commonalities in our career, you know, both art directors, both illustrators, commercially, and so that kind of intrigued me. So anyway, Marty, how did you find out about Mark?
Mark actually left a comment on the channel, and he said, "Hey, I think you said something like, Mark, I'm starting up my own new channel, and you know, I think I also left a comment on your video, what do you do with old sketchbooks?" And then I don't know, for some reason we were commenting back and forth, but I went over and looked at I think it was that video, and I just found it fascinating, and you were entertaining, and I thought to myself, wow, this dude's really neat. So anyway, I think I just told Steve about you, and then you got in our live thing, and that's kind of how we met virtually, which is so often the case these days. You know, we get friends from everywhere.
Yeah, so Mark, just tell us a little about yourself. How did you get interested in YouTube? Well, start wherever you want. How did you get started in art? Tell us a little about your career, what you like to do for your own art, whatever you'd like to tell us, and how you ended up on YouTube.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm super nervous because this is like, I've never done a live thing before, so I hope you know that this is, I'm out of my element. As I was saying earlier before the live, I said, you know, I have experience doing theater set design for my daughter's theater, you know, company and so forth, and I'm much more comfortable behind the set painting and creating than I am being in front of the camera, you know, performing. So this is the YouTube thing has been a challenge for me in that regard. So, but you know, being in the creative field my whole life, you know, I went to art school. I mean, I was like everybody. We were just little kids drawing, and then you grow up and you say, okay, what do I have to do with my career? And you know, I got really lucky. I have no other way to say it. It was, you know, people say there's no such thing as luck, but you know, here I was, this young guy, just trying to figure out what to do with my career, and I met an art director. And he sat down with me at a restaurant. He looked at my portfolio of illustration work, and I said, yeah, I want to be an illustrator. He said, you know, don't be an illustrator. He said, your illustrations are fine, but he said, you've got illustrations marked up on packages. You should be a graphic designer. And I'd never thought of that before. And so, you know, that's sort of where it progressed. And I went and, like to name drop, but my first big company was the Gillette company, and you know, that put me really in touch with, okay, you know, this is a career, this is a very high pressure job, and this is what real life is like. And it was the best time of my life. And you know, I've just gone on from there, and now it's like, you know, still working, still creating. I do contract work now, which I'm loving. Got a family and all that, and you know, YouTube was just a hobby. I just enjoyed watching other people doing it. But I know for me that I just kept I wasn't seeing certain things that I wanted to know about. And I guess that's how most people kind of go into YouTube. You go in to search on something like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And so I thought, you know, maybe I can kind of put the seam between some of those gaps and help some other people. And that's my mission, is to just help somebody. I'm not in it for the money. I'm not in it for the glory and the fame, although I'll take it, you know, come on. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, it's a hobby, and I just enjoy it. And meeting you guys was, as I said before, it's surreal to even just be hanging out with you guys. So this is a real treat for me. So thank you.
Mark, one of the things, I don't remember if it was what video it was. I think it was in one of your videos. You mentioned going into graphic design, having aspirations to be an illustrator, but going into graphic design because that paid the bills. And that really resonated with me because my goal from the start was to be an illustrator, but where I live, specializing like in the big cities, LA, New York, doesn't work. You have to kind of be a jack of all trades. So I ended up being a graphic designer, although I enjoy graphic design immensely. Ended up going to graphic design to pay the bills. And when you said that, that really kind of resonated with me. And then, you know, it's like, get the illustration jobs you can, but do graphic design, and that will take you, at least in this geographic area, took me a lot farther than illustrator or illustration ever would have.
Well, I think one of the hardest things for me was me and a couple of friends went to an illustration, I don't know what you call it, was like an open house where you get to meet the illustrators who are trying to sell their work. And this is while I was a graphic designer. And, you know, you could just see on their faces how hard it was for them to sell their work because, you know, this woman has a specific style, this guy has a specific style, and I couldn't use their work in the work that I was creating for companies. So I just had to say, oh, I like your work, thank you, and keep moving on. But, you know, the benefit for me, and I tried to communicate this in, I think, one of my videos was, and this is where I got lucky, and maybe it was skill and time, I don't know, but, you know, going into a meeting, in a corporate meeting, where these are people that are creating products that are going to be sold all over the planet, and people are going to see my work everywhere. And going into that meeting, and for the first time having somebody say, wait a minute, you can draw? And I said, yeah, I'm an illustrator too, and a graphic designer. Like, oh, okay. And so sketches and comps on the fly during a meeting really impressed a lot of the marketing folks and sales folks. And they grew really dependent on that because they would just kind of swing by the office and say, hey, can you draw me up something real quick? Yeah, sure. And so for me, that was fun, but I didn't realize that that was not kind of commonplace.
Yeah, it definitely isn't. I got some of the same reaction, not in the same way, but a lot of reaction. And it was kind of frustrating for me because clients and agencies that I work for tend to pigeonhole you into the first thing they see from you. And so it's like they never look beyond that. And it's like, wait a minute, here's my business card. I gave you my business card. I have a website. You know, I do all this other stuff. And I had clients years later saying, wait, you do this also? Wow. You know, and it's like, either I'm doing a really bad job of marketing, or, you know, people just, they like to put you in that little hole. But you know, anyway, that all resonates with me in various ways, and it's an interesting business. I'm kind of not in that anymore. I'm moving out of that into fine art, but it was just kind of neat meeting you and talking to you, and you know, you posted that thing about food,
right,
doing stock photography for food. That brought up a lot of memories.
Yeah, it's you know, the stock image library thing is something that I enjoy doing. It's more of a hobby, and it's something that I'm building and constantly building, but still buy stock art. So, you know, in this time of year when the holidays are coming, people in agencies and so forth, they're looking for that stock art. And, you know, like YouTube, like anything, the more you sell, the more you come up in searches. So I'm still way down at the bottom of the barrel, but, you know, I'm out there. So
yeah, and you went through the same airbrush obsession period that I went through.
Yeah,
that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I haven't airbrushed in years. Once I
me either.
Yeah, once I realized you can do it on a computer, like all the guffaws and all the problems I had with airbrushes and tubes and air traps and water traps, and just I was doing a big job for this hotel. I was retouching a photograph for them, and I had 2 copies of it. I kept spitting the water on it, and it ruined the photograph. So I had to be really, really careful with the second one, and it took forever to get it done. And I said, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah,
it's not fun. So
yeah.
But I mean, Marty, I know you had mentioned. Marty had mentioned that your dad was in graphic design, and you kind of saw that from a different perspective. I mean,
yeah.
Does that and does any of that resonate with you still?
Well, sure. Yeah, of course. And my dad's still a working artist. So he runs a marketing department for a company that does a lot of different products. So he's still creating like product cards, marketing sheets, all these things that you guys are talking about. It's bringing back a lot of memories. But, my dad was mostly a product artist, although, he could illustrate automobiles or people, things like that. And my memories of that come later, with my dad really working hard and trying to make it sort of in the business end of that. So, he sort of graduated into, I won't say graduated, it's probably a bad choice of words, but he moved into sort of executive management and still kept his hands in things all the time. But at one point was, higher up or whatever in a company. Ludwig Drums, actually, it's not a secret. So
wow.
So my dad worked for Ludwig for a long time, and but when they outsourced to China, things just changed in the industry, and so he had to find good work in another place. And my dad's like this humble guy, so he goes with all this talent and this executive leadership he's experienced, for years at Ludwig, and he goes and works for a t-shirt shop. Just so he can, use Quark Express and mess around with, all these tools. He just wanted to have fun, he just loves art and doing art. And I think, from that, I got his passion for it's just a weird bug that gets in you that like, if I haven't drawn for a couple days, I notice it. I just don't feel right, or there's something missing, or I got to fill that empty spot in my soul. And if I don't pick up a pencil or a brush very quickly, it'll just get to me. It'll just eat at me,
Sure, yeah. That's neat. I didn't realize that about your dad, that he was kind of in that industry to that degree. I've at my age, and I've had several art friends that I've kind of known through the years, and there have been 2 or 3 of them that end up going from the practicing role to more of the managerial role. And every one of them, it's like they're trying to figure out how to get back to getting their hands on the tools.
It's the lure of the money, right? You don't want to go from creating like art to learning about Six Sigma. I mean, I sit through those meetings every day, how do we do better lean design with our software? You know what I mean? I just want to go and punch code and to make something, build software. But it's interesting, like you say. But one question I wanted to come back to you on, Mark, was, like, what drove you, what started you down the YouTube path? Because all of us have different stories how we arrived at that journey. But under all that, there's some kind of a reason or desire. What was yours?
Honestly, it was because I had gotten away from fine art, and I had specifically gotten so deep into graphic design that, I kind of felt like I was losing my way with my fine art skills. All my brushes were junk. All my paints were all kind of hard and dried up. And I said, geez, I really want to get back into this again. So I went out and I started investing. I was a gouache painter before, especially with airbrush. I used a lot of gouache with airbrush. So, I started getting back into my fine art roots, started with colored pencil, watercolor pencils, getting back into watercolors. But I was one of those guys who was kind of like, I would buy the cheap stuff because I thought cheap is okay because it's just going to be fine. And I learned very quickly that cheap is not good. So my first search on YouTube, I believe, was, what is the best watercolor paint to use? And of course, especially you guys, because the debates I'm sure you guys could get in over, Schminke versus M. Graham versus, whoever, could go on for days. So I just listened to both of you and I said, all right, I'll buy Schminke and I'll buy M. Graham. And so,
can't go wrong,
man. And Marty, thank you to you, because, I had given up hope of buying Schminke. It was just out of my price range. And you had posted that special deal with the store that you work with. And boy, I'll tell you, that was a great deal that they offered, and I grabbed it and I ordered a couple of extras. The M. Graham paints are easily available around here, so I said, I just went to a local place and got some there. And it's hard now. It's hard to figure out, okay, what do I want to paint with? I love them both so much. Now I'm starting to use them both in one painting, so it's kind of weird. But
yeah, there's no rules with that. No.
But to answer your question, that's how I got into YouTube. It started with a search, and a gentleman YouTuber out there, I believe from Singapore, Tio, he was the first guy that I saw that was really reviewing stuff and doing practicing stuff. And what I enjoyed about his channel was he was learning as he was going. It seemed like, I'm going to try this and see how this works. And that led me to Steve's channel, and that led me to your channel, Marty. And the next thing I know, I've got all these possible channels to review and watch. And, finally, at some point, I noticed that there were gaps between what I was learning and what I was seeing on YouTube. And I thought, geez, I want to learn more about this, or I want to see some people doing this, but I couldn't find it. So I said, you know what? Maybe that's where I have something to offer. And, like I said, I like to be behind the scenes. So to step forward onto YouTube and make videos, it was a hobby. It still is a hobby. And I only do it if I have the spare time to do it. But it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. And hopefully I'm kind of sprinkling between those gaps and saying, hey, this person does this and that person does this and they do it great. But there's this space right here. And so that's I hope that answers the question. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's good. I know that when Steve and I talk about what got us onto YouTube, we have a somewhat different journey, but under it all, it's just a desire to share knowledge and to come to some kind of this is a community where, like, at an instant, I can just instant message Steve if I have a question about a particular brush or paint or whatever, and he'll give me his feedback, or I'll talk to Lindsay, the Frugal Crafter, or I can even talk to Val. Val's with us tonight. She joined us tonight in the live chat again. Hi, Val. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
And she's somebody who does, burning, like pyrography, and but someone who's all. I mean, if you saw her work, you'd be like, how does a human being do that? Have you ever looked at her work, Steve, and said to yourself, like that owl the other day? Did you see her owl? It was an owl, right? I hope it was an owl. Anyway, I was just amazed at, like, how does she do this? She had so much patience.
I thought it was a raccoon, but
all right. Well,
what I saw was a raccoon that was absolutely breathtaking.
Maybe she can tell us. But yeah, I mean, most of her work is that way, and it's just it's lovely. Anyway, the point is, content is king, on YouTube, and it's the great, like, as Steve would probably agree, the marketplace of ideas. And the internet's like the marketplace of content. Whatever your content is good, people are going to enjoy it. You're going to get followers. The endorphins will be released. Everybody will be happy.
Absolutely.
When go ahead, Steve.
Oh no, I was just going to agree. I mean, it's a passion, and passions are most and best enjoyed when you share them, I think. And while I would love to have paintings hanging in galleries around the country and selling those and making lots of money, I don't know that any of that would exceed. It might be great, it might be fun, but I don't know that any of that would exceed the thrill of passing on my passion for painting and watching the light come on, when somebody is learning for the first time, or or learning something new for the first time. They may not be a first-time painter, but something new, and just the light comes on. I get comments all the time, and those are just my favorite. It's like, whoa, I didn't know how to do this before, and now I do. And it's like, man, I revel in those. So I think that's the thing. It's sharing that passion, and YouTube is just a great venue for that.
Yeah, I will say,
going back, that Steve, you wouldn't like that. You wine and cheese and wearing an ascot with the long cigarette holder. That would get old after a while, wouldn't it? And a beret, you'd have the beret on.
Yeah, I was gonna say my original reason for getting into YouTube was the money, the chicks, the fame.
Yeah.
I quickly learned that that's not possible. So especially, the missus won't let me get into it for that. We're all good. But
people are pretty secretive about some of that stuff, Mark, not to cut you off, but I can tell you right now exactly how much I make off YouTube in general.
Yeah.
So every 3 months or so, I get a check for like $260 in my bank account. Nice. No, okay, great. I'm not prolific like some folks are, but.
And I hate to tell you, it doesn't get much better when you get more subscribers. It doesn't get much better. You got to find other sources.
Just do it for fun.
Just to go back for a second to someone like Valerie.
Yes.
I met her through your last live chat, and she was, I believe, moderating that or adminning that. And, I've become a fan. She does a live broadcast weekly, which I try to get to if I'm not working or doing something else. So I try to get to it. But she did this thing recently. It was a wood burning of a flower. And she pulls out this blowtorch, and she starts burning the entire background, and then she starts scraping the carbon out. And I have never seen someone do that in my life. And boy, I'll tell you, that's the kind of stuff, when you come across it and you get to watch somebody doing it for the first time, it's beyond learning. It's almost like, I hate to use the word epiphany, but it's like, wow, I didn't know you could do that. And then she starts
aha moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, you've done some of that with your watercolor and instructions and stuff, and I'm just like, I didn't realize you could do that, And Marty, I hate to say it, but when you were doing that motorcycle run, I was like, glory with you, my friend. I enjoyed every second of that video.
I thoroughly enjoyed that, Marty. Every last splash of mud, I loved it.
Did you guys? So here I am, this is the fat guy on a motorcycle. It's too small for him anyway. But I got in that puddle and I fell over, and there was guys. I wish I could have had the camera turned to them, but there was guys in ATVs. They're the rough looking guys that, they're just out for the weekend. There might be a gun in the ATV. Who knows?
Yeah.
But they're out having fun. And I made them laugh like school children. Okay. Because first I fell off into the mud. And then when I tried to get up, I fell again into the mud. And
I was laughing.
They were cracking up. My wife was laughing. And, it was fun. It's just good to go.
But I tell you, big mad respect too, man. You took it like a big Harley Davidson, Hell's Angel kind of a guy.
Well, it was fun. And, hell, I was in the Army for like a long time, so it doesn't get much worse than that. I've been in mud before.
Yeah. That was funny.
It was a good time. And, you mentioned Val, and she's got an assistant on her channel, and we should mention him too. That's her husband. And I sometimes watch their channel just to listen to those two go back and forth and crack each other up. It's very good. I think I left her a note about that the other day. But see, that's the kind of content that engages people, because you're like, wow, this is actually funny. It's good. It's entertaining. I'm learning something. I'm never going to scrape carbon off of a piece of wood probably in my life, but I'm fascinated by people who can do it. And sometimes when I look at Steve's work, Mark, I think to myself, if I spent another lifetime getting good at watercolors, I'd never be the way Steve is, as good as he is that way. So
I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I know, but I love watching it, and it's like Peter, Peter draws, right?
Yeah.
We talked about it before. I could never do the doodles he does. He calls them doodles. I call them like, someday those things will be hanging in galleries somewhere,
Yeah.
I mean, he's just got the whole deal. His personality's crazy. He says things like drawings, drawings. He'll say it like that, and he just paints with anything. He's just nuts, and I love that. So unique.
Yeah, very unique and
Well,
inspiring.
I saw my very first PewDiePie video the other day.
Oh no,
PewDiePie. Yes.
I've known about him for years, but I never sought him out. And I saw a recent video of his, and I understand why people watch. It's hysterical, and he's been doing it for a long time. He's got 57 million subscribers, and I don't know how you keep up with that, but it seemed as fresh as someone who was just starting out. And boy, if you can maintain that kind of personality and repertoire with your viewers, I mean, that's just brilliant. So I don't know what I'm bringing to the table personality wise. I'm just scared out of my mind every time I hit record. So
well, hey, literally I can remember when I got 57 subscribers, not 57 million, just 57.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what's wrong with these people? Because my content was crap, I was just putting up crazy stuff. And I just started, thinking about content, and just what could I offer and what was missing on YouTube. And Lindsay really helps me a lot with that. She's like, people aren't reviewing pencils like this. And since then, we've got people like Harry. I don't know if you know Ivor Harrison. He's got the art guide guy. He's awesome. Harry is he's a Northern Ireland guy transplanted to England, but his reviews are in depth, and he's been in Colored Pencil magazine a couple of times with his reviews. Yeah, so Harry's great, and he came along after, but like that was missing on YouTube, like reliable sort of non-biased reviews. Like I never let Mark, people try to send me stuff, give me stuff. I always try to buy it if I can, because then I'm not beholden to those advertisers or those manufacturers.
Right.
Like Prismacolor, I can take them to task all day long because they hate me now, but they never, I'm
gonna do this little plug right here. This is the Stonehenge hot press paper. Steve was giving this away on his channel a few weeks ago, and I desperately wanted to win some, but I'm a loser. So I knew I was a loser, and I said, you know what? I'm going to order this the same day anyway. So even while I signed up for the giveaway, I went out and ordered it anyway. And it's still in the package because the current video I'm working on is actually a review of this and Arches, whatever you want to pronounce it as, their hot press papers. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because I can do a review like that. My biggest video with the most views was a review of the Papermate, I think it's Papermate colored pencils, the little clickable lead one.
Oh yeah, right.
And I didn't think anything of it. I just thought I'd just do a quick review of these because I'd never used them before. And all of a sudden people said, well, where'd you get them? I'd never heard of those, and I'm like, wow, I didn't know. And so, I'll do this review of the Stonehenge paper versus Arches, but what I tend to do is I try to keep it fun. And for me, that's what I want to bring to this channel. My channel is the humor that you said about falling off the bike, and Steve with your wonderful posing and all the all the fun stuff you do, especially with Reese. I mean,
those etcher guys may never let me review another product.
But it's along with that review that I'm going to do, I have a game that I played with friends on Facebook. It's I'll get into that in the video. You'll see it, but to engage people, to engage the viewers, to interact, and people I'm friends with on Facebook, they jumped on this chance to engage me artistically. So it's I'm looking forward to it, and I'll hopefully have the video put together soon. My problem with the videos is I just find it gets time consuming sometimes.
Yeah.
And
I just don't have that kind of time these days. So
well, it's a big part of it, and I struggled with that, especially the first year. Trying to find ways to cut not the content value, but cut production and find ways to streamline. And you get to learn how to do it faster. You get to learn how to batch things, how to do, what days work best, how how to kind of do all the same kind of things in one day. You just like a factory become streamlined as you get through the process. But I don't know that, even all that said, I don't know how some of these people do it. It's all I can do to get one video out a week, and have it be the quality and the content that I want it to have. But
yeah, no, I totally am with you on that, Steve.
Yeah,
it's time consuming, Mark. It takes a lot of effort. I probably spend, and I'm not a prolific poster, but I can spend 2 weeks creating a video because I want the content to be a little higher quality. But sometimes, you can do all the post-production work and try to make the fonts fancy, and it really just comes down to, are people interested in what you have to say, and is what you have to say in the least bit entertaining, because content is king. Everybody can do a pencil review, but can you be somewhat entertaining doing it at the same time? Is it compelling? Do you have some passion around it? Things, that people are looking for. You know what? Put yourself in that seat and go look at. Sometimes I'll look at my own video and I'll say, you could be critical of yourself and say, "Is it crap?" Maybe I'll call my kid in or my wife and I'll say, "Look at this," and they'll say, "Yeah, okay, that's not bad," or "No, you've got to fix that," or "That I won't watch it for any more than 2 minutes," or something. So it's good to have that straight. There's a saying, and Steve and I have talked about this before, but your friends will tell you what's wrong, but your real friends will tell you what's wrong with you. And I found that so true in life, that if somebody really cares about you, they'll be direct and honest with you. So
yeah,
I appreciate the feedback.
Well, it's funny. Go ahead, Steve. You're going to say something.
Oh no, go ahead, because I'm probably going to change the subject here. So finish your thought.
What I was just going to say was, I posted a video that you both responded to very graciously, and I am grateful for your feedback and your support on it. It was a video that was, for me, it was really hard to put together because it was such an intimate, personal thing. And it's, if you go to my channel, you'll see the video. It's on a subject that was very hard for me to talk about. It's how I survived a brain tumor. And, the subject of it was how I used art to survive. And so I had to find a way to incorporate the art part of it, the health part of it, the symptoms and the side effects later, and and what am I doing with it now, all in one, like 10 to 15 minute video that was interesting and entertaining. So I had to dig up old photographs, find creative ways to present stuff, and I believe it was successful in that I communicated everything I wanted to hit on quickly, fluidly, and then at the very end there's a message that, hey, my mission is to promote awareness and raise funds, and that's what I did for that video. And now that video is being circulated through the National Brain Tumor Society to help other people. So I mean, that's my mission, is to just help other folks. And
well, Mark, I wanted to say that was a fantastic video. Yeah. I mean, it was inspiring, number one. Number two, what you said about incorporating the art, that was brilliant. And what you actually did, I mean, the fact that you incorporated in the video, to me, was not half so brilliant as what you actually did with the lines. And I know from, having been involved in branding and branding campaigns, I mean, that was amazing. And to me, I know sometimes you don't know what you can rise to till you're put in the situation, but to me, I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know that I would have risen to that challenge, while I'm sitting there contemplating, having to go through a brain tumor and brain cancer and all that. And, to boot, have something be successful and take care of my family. So, I mean, admired you very much for that, the message, but creatively it was just a great video. It also, I think, just puts you on a real human level that people can identify with. And you viewers out there, and all of our channel links, well, this is my channel, but all of the other channel links, Marty's and Mark's, will be down in the description when this is a recording. But make sure you go to Mark Campbell's site and watch his brain cancer video. It's very inspiring. just you'll love it. It'll be something that you'll want to share with others. But anyway, I just wanted to say that. And yeah, you're absolutely right, Mark. Sharing ourselves and being ourselves is not only very important, but it's also very rewarding.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you so much for the kind thoughts. And I know you and Marty both posted on that video, and it's, you know, it's humbling to hear such grateful thoughts, you know, and kind thoughts. You know, and I think when you can present such, like you said, like a human element of yourself, it's so personal that there's not one part of it that you could make up, you know. And I see that in other people's videos. You know, there's a young woman named Kendall who's got a great illustration channel, and she's a new mom. And, you know, I've got kids of my own, and I've been through it already. And, you know, I know you guys have kids and stuff, but this is a young woman who's trying to be an illustrator and raise a family, and she's presenting it as she's going through it. And I think it's brilliant. And, you know, to see that kind of human level keeps me coming back as a viewer. So, you know, if it's fake and you're just throwing it out there, you know, I've seen plenty of YouTube videos, I know we all have, that you watch, like Marty said, you watch it for a couple minutes and you're like, all right, I'm not engaged. It's kind of forced. It's not really what I'm looking for. So you kind of move away. So,
Mark, I wanted to kind of shift the conversation a bit to your art, and just talk about the subjects, the things you like to do, not necessarily commercially, but although that too, what you like to do personally. Most of what I've seen, at least on your channel, has been whimsical, humorous illustration. I hesitate to say cartoon, because that kind of takes me a different place. But anyway, talk about that. Talk about the styles that you like to do, what you like to do, the mediums, what artists inspire you, and you know, where you're thinking about going with that on a personal level.
Yeah, sure. You know, I was born and raised on Mad Magazine and R. Crumb and some of the old, you know, cartoonists. And so I tried to emulate that growing up. And I'm sure you guys are familiar with that stuff. Mm-hmm. But my dad was a biology professor, and a lot of times I would go with him to school, and he would have all these old skulls, like animal skulls and stuff like that. And, you know, I'd be in the back room just drawing them, not realizing as a young kid that I'm drawing anatomy and stuff like that. So early on, my parents sent me to a local art college where we did still lifes and things like that. So I was getting like the art training as a young guy. But later, it was more fun to combine the traditional art that I knew, color and all that stuff, and put it into that whimsical kind of cartoony style. And, you know, I was the kid that if you gave me a coloring book, I had more fun coloring out the background around the character, not the character. And I would always leave him blank and just have more fun drawing things around him. But, you know, as far as what I do now, style. I mean, that's the word of my life, is like, what is my style? What style do I like? Because I had a teacher in art school that said, you need to have one style and you need to master that style. Excuse me one second. I just want to grab a drink of water. But, you know, she said, master one style. And I completely agree with that for commercial illustrators. You need to have a style that people recognize and you can sell. But I had a hard time with that because I had several different styles. And for me, it was about, you know, what do I like to do right now? What am I doing? So like you, Steve, with airbrush, it's like, that was a whole different style. And once I got past that and I became the graphic designer, all of a sudden it's like, well, okay, now I'm influenced by graphic designers, you know? And so for me, that was a whole different kind of art. And so now, fast forward, it's all about what I'm comfortable with, what I love doing. I still struggled through certain kinds of art, you know, doing a lot of the landscapes and things like that. Still, you know, getting them the way I want them eludes me sometimes. So I have to work hard to remember that, okay, don't force it. Go with what you know. And if you go with what you know, it'll come out better than you hoped. But if you try to force it, if I try to do Steve Mitchell stuff, it's not going to look right. If I try to do Marty stuff, it's not going to look right. And so,
yeah, good luck with that.
Campbell does, you know, no one else can do it, and I have to remember that because I forget, and I want to get better like other people that I see. You know, if I look at Peter draws, I want to quit and be like, okay, I give up. You know, this is
yeah,
he's good, and I acknowledge that. I don't know if you know Holly Exley, but she's an English illustrator.
Does a lot of food illustration.
Yeah, and she actually, you know, she's so great with what she does. But if you watch her channel, she brings such, you talk about a human element. She had a recent conflict as a vegan where one of her clients wanted her to draw meat. And she was conflicted with that. And she said, you know what, I can't do it just by my personal beliefs. And I said, you know, I don't know if I could do that myself, but I admire somebody who can stand up for their principles in their art and in their career. So,
sure.
And on a creative level, her videography is just beautiful, and her vlogging style. She does great vlogging, like travel vlogging and stuff. Sometimes has nothing to do with art. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Another young woman is Minnie Smalls. I don't know if you know her. She does a lot of gouache work, and she's just so versatile with her style and
very creative. Yeah,
what she comes out with, I watch that and I'm amazed. And there's so many others, you know, too, that I'd love to mention everybody, but so much out there. So for me, going forward, what do I want to do with my art? I don't know. It's going to organically form itself into something that hopefully I can learn from myself and maybe even sell. You know,
well, I think that's a great answer. I mean, a lot of people have asked me, how do you find your style? It's like one of those questions. And, you know, my answer is always, you don't find your style finds you. And you really, it's kind of hard to understand until you kind of put it into context and start experimenting with styles. But style develops naturally. It's rarely forced. I rarely have ever seen someone say, I'm gonna paint like this and like that and do this and that. It's usually something very esoteric, might be the right word, that just kind of happens as you draw the subjects that are your preference, as you paint the style and then the techniques that mean the most to you. And as you start doing certain ones over and over and over again, your style emerges. It's something that manifests. To find your style and execute your style is almost impossible. And yet there are tons of artists out there that think that's the way to approach it. You know, like you're going out to buy a car or something. It doesn't happen that way. And you know, I totally agree with you. Though usually by the time you're a professional illustrator, you've gone through all that. You kind of have something, and you know, then people hire you based on consistency. But even then, some of the best illustrators I've seen, you know, they reinvent themselves every few years. They may or may not, but you know, because styles change, trends change. But you've got to constantly let that style find you. At least that's what I think.
Well, one of the strangest experiences I had was making that video about the what to do with your old sketchbooks. Something completely unexpected happened. I made that video because I had boxes and boxes of sketchbooks that I didn't know what to do with. And so I said, geez, you know, I want to make room. I want to consolidate these sketchbooks. I actually have it right here. You know, this is the, I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is the sketchbook. This is the final product of 30 years of sketchbooks. And what I found was that, you know, I can't really show you here, but what surprised me and really was an epiphany for me was that my style was glaring back at me. So if there was any question of what my own personal style was over the course of my life, it's right in this book. And I had no idea until I started clipping them out, assembling them back in. My only regret with that that book and assembling that is I wish I had done it chronologically. You know, going from the earliest years to the latest years. I did it by size and what fit where. So, but I'm really happy I did that. I've had to refer back to that book a couple of times since that video, but boy, if you ever want to get a glimpse of what your style is, if you forget, go back to your old stuff and really just look at your own work, and you'll see it there. It's in the pages.
It's a great point. And that was a great video too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that video. One of the things that occurred to me, like going back to what you were talking about earlier when you made the video about your tumor, whenever we lay ourselves bare, we commit some kind of I don't know, act of attrition maybe, or whatever, where it's I don't mean to be too philosophical about it, but you let yourself be vulnerable for a minute and kind of throw it out into the ether, into the world. And sometimes the community embraces that, and other times there's sort of a callous indifference, and sometimes you don't know which one it's going to be, but that's not what it's about, really, is it? It's about sharing your story. And so, as somebody who went to school for history and studied a lot of history in my life, I think in years from now, historians will look back on these snapshots of our lives and look for those moments when we were exceptionally vulnerable, to understand the human experience in the early 21st century. And you know, your video is going to be one of those examples, Mark, where it's like, if I stumbled across that as an archivist or a historian, I'd say that's a good example, but not just for historical purposes, but the human element of it. And I was glad that you did it. I was also nervous for you, scared for you, thinking about how can this guy make this thing humorous? And then I had the same exact thought Steve had. How the hell would I deal with that if anything ever happened like that? I can't imagine handling that with the grace and maturity you did. But those are just some thoughts I had going back to what you said.
Yeah.
Well, I think, honestly, I handled it with a great deal of immaturity. And that's where the humor came from. And, you know, I did more joking about, I remember being in the hospital bed joking right before surgery, and just, you know, when I came out of surgery and I woke up, I said, "Can I have a hamburger?" You know, and laughed. It was sort of the way I dealt with it, was to laugh. And even now I still try to deal with it. But, you know, I won't lie, there's when you go through something personal like that, I don't care if it's a brain tumor, if it's, you know, a loss in your family and you're dealing with grief, or whatever you're dealing with, people in general, we all deal with different things on different levels. And the effects of those cascade throughout not just our lives, but through our kids and our friends and our coworkers, everybody. And so to put it on YouTube and have strangers look at it, and somebody comes back and says, "Hey, I dealt with something very similar, and, you know, I can relate," and you know, they kind of share their story. That's what it's about. And you know, I got an email the other day from this young woman, very young woman, probably early 20s. And she said, I work for the National Brain Tumor Society, and I saw your video, and we want to put it on our Facebook page. And I said, "Of course." And she said, "You don't know me, but in your video at the very end, when you show a postcard it's like a thank you postcard of the walk, and it's a group shot of survivors." She said, "That's me standing right next to you in the checkered scarf."
Oh, wow.
And I was floored. I said, you know, how is it that this young woman at such a young age is now working for this organization? And I've never met her, but all of a sudden I feel this kinship to her, and I'm, you know, she shared her story with me, and it's amazing. It's really just, you know, you never know what's going to come out of something once you put it out there. So,
well, I'm curious about the lines, kind of to turn this on back to art a little bit, because, you know, I've been involved in branding campaigns, and so, you know, I know the work that goes in to brainstorming those. And how did that, I mean, for those viewers who don't know, haven't seen the video yet, I think, Mark, you had a tumor about the size of a lime, and then you decided to use that to raise money for tumor awareness. Am I getting that right? Or cancer awareness?
Yeah. Well, you know,
how did that, you know, no pun intended, how did that brainstorm happen?
I was sitting in, I had probably about 8 consultations. You know, everybody says get a second opinion. I decided to get 8. And so I met with lots of different oncologists and neurosurgeons and all these kind of people. And the gentleman that I finally landed with was an incredible surgeon. You know, he's got this heavy accent and a young guy, and he said, point blank, he said, you know, you've got this tumor. It's about the size of a lime. And I thought that was the funniest thing. And I cracked up in front of him, and I said, not a lemon, a lime. He goes, no, it's not big enough to be a lemon. It's about the size of a lime. And so, you know, you dismiss that afterwards. And then later when I guess what happened for me was when it finally hit that things were not going right for me at that point. You know, work was not, you know, panning out the way I thought it was going to. You know, I had gone through some personal stuff in my life that put me in a position where there's no way I could afford to, you know, sustain a lifestyle for my kids and I making what I was making. I had to reach out. For the first time, I finally had to use that 4-letter word, help. And even now, it's still hard for me to even think about saying that word. I can do it myself. That's my attitude. But I couldn't do this myself. So, you know, my fear turned to anger, and my anger turned to proaction. And I said, all right, you know, fear makes you huddle in a corner, but anger makes you do something.
Yeah.
If you can be creative with your anger and not part of the anger, but use the positive part of anger, the creative part, it's I consider it like a volcano erupting, and the lava can breathe new life to the landscape. You know, I'll show you this right here. I don't know if you can see this. For anyone who doesn't know it, that's the logo that I developed. And honestly, Steve, I'll be blunt with you. I don't know how it happened. It just happened. And that's where my faith comes in. That's where my spirituality comes in. And I know that's a hot button topic for some people, but
not for
you know
me
what,
and Steve, it's not.
Not for us. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I will just say very simply that the answers were provided for me in a way that I just could not even tell you how it happened. I just don't know. And it just happened. And, you know, it's been 5 years now since this all happened for me. And, you know, I thank God every day, every single day. I thank God just to wake up in the morning and say, you know, hey, I got this challenge today and it's not going to be easy, but I have it. Because I'll tell you, I have met so many people, so many good friends and good people who have survived these brain tumors. Some, they're not able to function on a day-to-day basis by themselves. And my friend Steve, different guy, Steve Aiken died in 2014. He was my teammate. He was my 3 Fine Limes teammate for the brain tumor walks. And he didn't survive. He died from the brain tumors. And he left behind his high school sweetheart and 3 strapping young sons ready to go to college. And, you know, I look at that and I say, you know what? That's what pushed me forward. That's what makes me want to keep doing it and even talk about it. You know, I don't get anything from it. I'm not looking for attention or money or anything. It's just, this is my story, and I'm a storyteller. So here we go. Thank you for asking.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, it was perfect. And I'll confess that when I watched your video, I rewound. That dates me, doesn't it? That I backed the video up at least 4 times over that spot where you went from learning about your tumor to developing the limes for life and realizing you needed something to take care of your family and all of that amalgamation. I thought, wow, you know, just that it seemed like just everything. I mean, in the video, and I realize there's a video that you edited together, but everything just seemed to fit together. So I'm really gratified to hear that you know, did sort of happen in your faith life, and those answers were provided for you. That's just really cool.
What the weird thing was it's humbling. I mean, there's no other word I can use. It's just purely humbling when you have a situation where you ask for help and all of a sudden a hand comes out of nowhere and pulls you up out of what you're in. But then all of a sudden you realize there's another hand and another hand and another hand, and there's so many people that gathered around me to help me. My friends Justin and Margaret, I'll just give them a quick shout, because they helped me create a website where I could actually sell the things I was creating and make this happen. And you know, I met with a charity lawyer, and I said, I want to turn this into a formal charity so I can raise money to help other people. And you know, the stack of paperwork, it's around here somewhere. It's about that thick of what I would have had to fill out and file, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it myself. And that's when my teammates Erica and Steve came along, and we talked about it. And all of a sudden, this clear answer came: don't start a charity. There's already one that exists. Help that one. And so, again, answers were provided. Now, when we raise money, I don't deal with a check. Nobody sends me anything. It goes right to the charity. So all I have to do is, you know, make the walk, go the distance, and you know, participate, and people will help. So I've been very fortunate and very blessed to have great people, great doctors, great family, and great support. And this is no different. This is just a continuation of that support. So. And hopefully I'll pay this forward to somebody else somewhere. So
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
And for you, it's like, you know, I don't know much about your backstory and things that you've gone through. So, you know, maybe there's a story there to tell too.
Well, you know, there may be. I don't physically. I can't, you know, claim anything quite as traumatic as that. But certainly we all have our stories. And I have, you know, I have 5 kids. 4 of them are married now, and I have 9 grandchildren. So I've got stories unfolding every day.
Yeah,
and, that's
a story right there into itself.
Yeah.
My standards. I mean, the fact that you have made it to grandparenthood, that's what I'm looking forward to. I've got teenagers, so you know, we've got 4 under our roof, and it's always. You know, you got your sneakers on all the time, ready to go somewhere, and it's not easy. It's never easy. So
yeah, no.
But, you know, how is that with the grandchildren?
Well, it's never a dull moment. Put it that way. And thankfully, they're all local. You know, they're all around here, and I can hardly believe my oldest grandson now is 13. I think I got that right. And my youngest is just a little over 1 year old. So I've got quite a span there. And you just, you know, a lot of times you don't realize how rich you are till you just stop, look around, and see everything, you know, that is part of your life and impacts your life. And, you know, it's amazing. I don't know. Half the time I don't feel like I've got very interesting stories to tell. It's just me, just boring old Steve, you know.
Yeah, but you must be like the coolest artsy grandpa, you know, out there. I mean, just looking behind you at all the goodies and the stuff to just, you know, troll through. If you're a kid, it's like, wow.
I've had so many kind of aspirations that were I would call them immature. To a degree, I thought my biggest aspiration was I was going to be a graphic designer and commercial illustrator only till I could really make it as a sci-fi fantasy illustrator.
Wow.
That was what I wanted to do. One of my good friends, artist by the name of Doug Chafee, sci-fi illustrator, successful one, did a lot of book covers. He kind of moved around, went up to Pennsylvania, moved back down here to South Carolina, then moved away again and came back. And he and I talked frequently. And I wanted to do what he did. And, you know, I had all the books. I still have several of them on my shelf of all the top fantasy and sci-fi illustrators. And I even did some underpainting work for him when he got really busy. You know, I think I told you, Mark, in one of the comments when we were talking about airbrush, I took back in the 90s, I took a seminar, one-day workshop with Drew Blair, and he had these. He does a lot of military stuff, a lot of military machinery and aeronautical stuff for calendars. But he also did these incredible, like Star Trek and movie poster kind of things. That's at one time I thought that's what I wanted to do, and the whole industry really took a turn. I mean, guys in that industry that were successful were all of a sudden not getting work, and then all these new guys came up, and if you go look through the sci-fi section now, about half of it is digital, or well, more than half probably. 3/4 of it is all digital. Most of the work is still painted, and I thought, okay, that's all right. But then you start seeing digital photography and kind of hybrid work where you get photography and rendered work kind of combined. And I don't know, somewhere along the line, I just kind of lost interest in it. And what's funny is I'm now full circle, because when I got out of college, my aspirations were to just do landscape watercolor and eventually open my own gallery. I doubt I'll ever do that, but I'm kind of back to where I was. And so I ended up going into retail management because I wanted to learn how to run my own retail business. So yeah, you have a lot of those kind of stories, but they're all kind of maturing, bringing up stories. And I think the neat thing about it, though, you get this amalgamation of experiences, specifically in art, that just kind of mold and craft your style, your skill set. You meet people that just add that one little thing that you didn't do before, and you see them doing it. It's like this one thing here, this one thing there, and it just kind of brings your whole art life to a conclusion of that story. And I think that I'm kind of rambling here and switching subjects, but I think that's one of the things that I love too about sharing on YouTube is adding those things that people. I have comments all the time. I don't really do watercolor, but I want to get back into it or add it to my current cache of art practices. You might say I do colored pencil, or I do this, and you're providing that little technique here or idea there. And I think back on that whole story of I've had so many varied experiences and ideas and pursuits that have all kind of come in to make this unique style and skill set and story, if you will. So I don't know if any of that made any sense, but
yeah, absolutely. And especially when you commented about full circles and where you started and where you are now. When I went to art school, I remember standing in line during registration, and somebody said, somebody came up with a clipboard and said, okay, what's your major? And I looked around at the people I was standing with, and I was like, what did you pick? And somebody said, well, why are you here? Why are you in art school? Do you paint? Do you draw? Do you do graphic design? I said, well, I draw. I like to draw, pictures. And they said, well, then you're an illustrator. And somebody said, well, what kind of pictures do you like? I said, well, I've always wanted to be a children's book illustrator. And I can go back as far as when I was, 5, 6 years old, wanting to illustrate or draw children's books. So that has always been my goal, was to be a children's book illustrator. And so years, you fast forward years, and I finally created a couple of children's books, and I took them to publishers, and the first one said, we really like your story, we really like your artwork, but your timing's off. We have a bully book, backlog right now, and yours is a great bully book, but we've got 3 in the publication works, and we've got 10 more on hold. So good luck. Another publisher said, yeah, we really like your artwork, but it's digital. We want traditional. And fast forward a couple of years, and so I, get into my colored pencil work, and somebody says, "Yeah, we don't want traditional, we want digital." So you can't win. It's very discouraging. It's very, taxing on your time to try to figure out, well, they want this and they don't want that, but that changes weekly. What do I do? And, it comes back to what you said about full circle. Had the whole corporate experience, my whole life has been working for corporations. I still work for a medical university now, but in my solo time, my pursuit is to continue to try to get children's books published. I've done self-publishing. I don't like doing self-publishing. I want somebody to publish my work. It's almost like
you've got a great style for that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I have not been so confident about the presentation of that style, though. That's what's been kind of holding me back. And I realized, that the young woman Kendall that I mentioned before, she has a video out right now where she's talking about don't wait, just do it. And that has been one of my biggest, comments, I guess, to young artists. Don't hesitate. Just don't plan on it all. Don't go out and buy all the right materials. Just get a couple of things and start. Starts with a pencil and a piece of paper. And if you can't find that, grab some charcoal out of a fire and grab a napkin, and anything you get will be sufficient. So, but that's what I just wanted to add to what you were saying. I completely understood what you were saying. And, the stories we all tell, like Marty, you've got, I had no idea that you rode dirt bikes. I think that chapter just came out of nowhere for me. And I wonder, okay, what else has this guy got under his hat that he's going to share with us next,
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, that was my wife's, that's my wife's midlife crisis. So that's the problem there. Just go along with her. So, but I'm happy to do it. But hey, I was going to ask you, Mark, because children's illustrations, and there's a very famous guy with a similar story to yours. And I don't know if you know who this guy is, but this is Chris Ayers. And Chris Ayers was diagnosed with leukemia in 2005, and he decided to write a couple of books based on how he helped get through his leukemia, and he calls it The Daily Zoo, and there's year 1 and year 2. This happens to be year 2, but I have year 1 too, and just take a look at some of his illustrations that he does here, and he just draws these characters that come to his mind. And in the back there's like pictures of every day of the month that he draws these characters. And anyway, they've all got like neat little stories if you're interested. But the point is, he reminded me of you, Mark. And if people are interested, his name is Chris Ayers. He's just got a really compelling story. And he got leukemia and he's in remission, but it's kind of like what he went through, how drawing, how illustrating, how doing one drawing a day helped him overcome, or get through it, help him cope with like his illness. It was a bright spot in an otherwise, not so great day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you know what?
You know exactly what I mean, don't you?
Absolutely. And I'm going to check that book out immediately. That's right in the alley of what I love to see. And from what I see there, it's gorgeous too.
Yeah. Chris Ayers.
Yeah. I'm going to check that out immediately.
I think you'd like it.
Well, and that's funny because that's the kind of stuff that I love. I love a good story. I love to tell a good story. And, the weirder or the more bizarre it is good, but when you realize that there's truth and fact base on it, that's even better. So if you've got a true story that's kind of surreal or bizarre, or even just like, enlightens you, it's like, wow, what a great story to tell, But
sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things that happened for me, I was given this right here. This is my, we've all seen these. These are Apple iPad, and this is the one that was given to me when I was recovering from surgery, and I had never used an iPad before, so I didn't really know what you could do with it. So my first things to do were play games. I could listen to music. I couldn't stand a lot of bright lights and things. So for me back then, that was tough. But you know, an iPad for me was nothing more than just a big, you know, iPod. And so I didn't really understand the function of it until I bought an art app. I bought, I think it was called Art Rage. And, you know, I started messing around with my finger, just drawing on this thing. And I said, geez, this is fun, but it's like for kids. But then I started realizing what you could do with that. And that changed the entire game for me. And I started creating all kinds of different artwork, from whimsical cartoons to portraits to all kinds of things, just based on this new tool. It was like getting some kind of crazy new paintbrush. And, you know, I mean, the natural paintbrushes that I have for watercolor and gouache painting, it's like, those are nice, but boy, nothing better than my finger, you know. that was like, that was just blew my mind. So, you know, I still draw on the iPad, but in a different capacity now. So it's become a professional aspect of my drawing skills. So, and I use that for corporate. You know, when we do a newsletter for the place I work now, and they say, can you do, you know, a stock illustration of a lion, or can you do, you know, a cartoon for the, you know, the cartoon section? I just pull out the iPad and work right off that now. I don't even need pen and ink anymore. And
sure.
Yeah, I wrote a whole children's book digitally. Never put paper to pencil for a single page. But I prefer to do traditional. That's where my heart is traditional artwork. So.
Sure. Steve, we should probably take some questions if we're going to do that.
I was just going to say, we've been at this a little over an hour. We're probably going to see if anybody has any questions, and then we'll bring it to a close after that. Any questions for any of us? And if you can just put question in all caps if you want in the comments, so we can
Val's
easily see it.
Helping us out, so she's got the. She even kicked out a spammer tonight, Steve. You would have loved.
Oh, awesome! Thank you, Val.
She laid the smack down hard.
Is that Val helping out?
Yes.
Oh,
yep.
God bless her. Thank you, Val.
Yeah, she's the best, man. So, yeah. So, anyway, as we wait for some of the questions, I was thinking the other day, Steve and Mark, when we get together next time. See, Steve and I have been talking about this for a while, but I'd like to pull together some topics and get into a particular like area or aspect of the practice that you know might help people understand, like not only well, for instance, just pick one: paints, paper, brush, whatever it is, but just get into one area and then just talk about the different experiences, not just from a product standpoint, but that could be good too, but creatively, you know, what do you do with this? What's the, you know, what's the purpose in your practice? Things like that.
Right.
We got some questions popping up here. What's wrong with Reeves brand watercolors? Marty, have you ever reviewed Reeves?
I think I have. And you know, there's nothing extraordinarily bad about them, but there's nothing extraordinarily good about them.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, they're okay. They're like you know, most of their Reeves brands are like a student grade watercolor, and most of the manufacturing of Reeves brands have been really outsourced and kind of low-ended, so that their manufacturing processes are very expedient, but you know, the focus is less on quality and more on quantity and trying to keep costs down.
So that entry level art supply, more or less,
although they have a line, you know, Steve, like all companies have a line, but I'd say their artist grade is like a medium student grade for another paint. Whereas like if you take a Faber-Castell, their student grade pencils are as good as art grade pencils from other companies, you know. So, you know, it happens across all the spectrums, but I'd say Reeves is, you know, it used to be a more venerable, more respected brand, but over the years, that brand has really been diminished by the, you know,
a question.
Desire for profit. Yeah.
What are some of your immediate objectives, goals for your YouTube channels? you want to start with that one, Mark, since you're the newest YouTuber here?
My goal is to be consistent. That's the word, consistent. If I go back to my very first video, I cringe. I just cringe because it's so wrong. There's so much wrong with it, and I didn't know anything. And you know, I was holding my phone with my hand, and it's shaking, and I just wanted to share something. And I said, you know, I have something to share here, and here it is. So, you know, I'll pull this out. This is something I got on Amazon. I don't know if you can see this thing or not. It's this thing clamps onto the table.
Oh, I have that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got this bendy arm on it, and
Yeah.
it's got this nice little thing here. So
Yeah,
I
that
still
thing's great.
record with a phone. I don't have any fancy camera setups or anything like that. So I'm like the MacGyver guy. I mean, if I showed you my setup over here, you'd laugh at me because it's wood with.
Oh, I wouldn't laugh. Steve wouldn't laugh.
I've got
We both been there. Yeah.
I've got bungee cords and elastics and a piece of wood, and it all works. So you know,
Yes, sir. That's what you do.
yeah. So I just want to be more consistent with the content, with the releases, and the lengths especially. I got a feedback on my video. I had one video that was, I think it was over 15 minutes long, and the person said, I don't ever watch videos over 10 minutes, so you might want to shorten it. And I thought, okay, that's good advice. I don't know what the standard time is, but
That's so advice.
yeah.
Because content is king. Like right now, what Steve has an established following, he can produce a video that goes for like an hour or 45 minutes, and people will watch it, you know, all the way through. I tend to stick with the 10 or 15 minute video, unless it's like an art adventure that's going to take longer. But you know, honestly, the rule of thumb is just content is king. So anybody that tells you a video has to be 5 minutes or 10 minutes, you know, it depends on the quality of the content.
Yeah, and it really depends on the viewer. You know, when I first started, I used to pay a lot more attention to that. I really don't get those kind of comments anymore about length, but I used to get. At first, I was getting a lot of comments to make them longer. I was trying to keep them to 10 minutes, and you know, that's great. I love what you did there. Make it longer, make it more. And but you know, the conventional wisdom was that you don't do that, you know, because attention span is kind of a metric on YouTube, and you know, that drops off. And then I you know, like Marty said, you know, you have the more people that come onto your channel and start appreciating your content, the more they're willing to tolerate longer and longer videos, and also the more I was finding out I really couldn't treat the subjects I wanted to treat the way I wanted to treat them in 10 minutes. So
tolerate, I would say, appreciate.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I mean, I know during the editing process for me, it's like, you know, there's so much I have to just chop out because I just go on and on and on and on.
And one thing you need to do is remember to take most comments as anecdotal, not and unless you're getting like, you know, 50,000 of the same comment, then that's kind of, you have people that will say one thing, and if nobody else is saying that, it's probably not necessarily a problem. So
could be their preference or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's wise. I think that's good advice.
I was getting so many comments that were different, you know. I would have somebody say, you need to do this, and then I'd get the exact opposite comment, and I still get a lot of that. So kind of have to take all that with a grain of salt. One of the things I did was take informal surveys 2 or 3 times to find out what most people were interested in, given the things that I'm willing to make videos about. And you'll learn a lot from your viewers that way, because you'll start getting, you know, a consensus. And if you get, you know, you'll get like somebody will comment and say, they'll mention something very specific. I want a painting or drawing, learning how to do this. And it's like, but nobody else has ever asked for that. And it's not that that's not something you couldn't do a painting of, but
sometimes you just want to see you paint, Steve.
Yeah, sometimes people will just say stuff, off the top of their head. So
yeah, but here's a brilliant idea. Well, and I didn't think of it, but just ask people. That's what I do. I just go and say, hey, could you drop some feedback on the channel? And I did this about a year ago, and I got like 300 comments. Like, and out of those 300 comments, I got so much good so much good feedback and ideas about how to improve the channel, and it made a difference. It really made a difference. I saw, good upswing in subscribers and people interacting with the channel. But one thing I've done from the beginning that I'm proud to say is a little different than most YouTubers. I try to answer every single question or comment on my channel. Every single one. I try. Sometimes I miss them, but I try to get to all of them.
I think that's honestly what endeared me to both of you guys, was the fact that I watch a lot of the videos out there, especially later at night when I'm, winding down, kids are going to bed.
Sure.
And I throw down thoughtful comments. I don't just say, I don't just put your random, hey, great job. I try to provide a thoughtful, well-worded response or compliment or whatever it is, even a criticism if it merits it. And a lot of times, there's no feedback from that. There's no acknowledgement of the comment I just left. Without naming names, there's been a couple of YouTubers that I would consider are on the bigger end of the subscriber, ships. And yes. I've made comments on several videos and never heard back. And
so well, me, Mark, I will say, no, go ahead. Yeah,
I was just going to say, for me, it's just kind of sour grapes, because it's like you're not interested in what people have to say. You just want to put out the videos and get whatever monetary end of it you can get, or what. I don't know what their objectives are, but if you're not going to address the fan base or the viewership, then why are you doing it?
Well, let me just say this in their defense. Okay, so if you've got like 100,000 subscribers and say you get an average of 300 or 400 video comments on a single video, I know for me, I spend about 7 to 8 hours a week responding to comments. That's a work day.
Wow.
So you better be ready and prepared if you have a ton of subscribers to do that. And I think some people just get overwhelmed, because then you get in that spot where, do I use my time to produce content or to engage on the channel, and where do I strike the right balance? So I'm somewhat sympathetic to people with like Lindsay. She can never reply to all her subscribers that comment on her channel. She gets 1,000 comments. It's like she'd be all day and never do anything with her kids.
And it's becoming impossible for me. What I had to start doing was just responding to questions only, or maybe on occasion a comment that kind of resonated with me in a unique way. But most of them, I started out responding to every single comment.
Yes.
And it didn't take too long before I couldn't do that anymore. And so you had to find ways to kind of decide which ones. I always try to answer questions. Always try to do that. If I don't, it's just because I missed it. But it gets to a point where, and I imagine Lindsay probably, just it would be absolutely impossible. Absolutely impossible.
I have to check out Lindsay's channel, because I haven't seen it in a while, so I'm really curious to see what she's got on her channel now. So, but I appreciate that insight too. That's actually valuable for me, because I am at that stage where I'm responding to every comment, and I don't have that many subscribers, so for me it's not 8 hours, it's about 8 minutes a week. So
I think you should at first. I think it's healthy, and it's very engaging, and YouTube counts that as a positive metric. The more engagement that you have, I would still do it if it were possible, but it's like Marty was saying, that'd be all I'd be doing. That's be the only thing I'd be doing.
But if you go to Lindsay's channel, Mark, be prepared for one thing for sure. Lindsay's channel is like you just woke up and you took a cup of espresso and mainlined it. So she is very engaging, and so much about what I love about her personality is like, "Hi, I'm Lindsay the Frugal Crafter." You know, it's like she's just so happy and upbeat. It's just whenever I need a pick me up, I just go and binge watch her channel for an hour, and I'm pretty happy. But we got some more questions coming in, Steve. So
Okay.
we should probably ask. We should probably try to answer.
Yeah, fire away if you see one.
All right, I see. Let's see. Art ideas for stay in wintertime. Right, not all can plein air paint. So I think Essie is saying not everybody can get out and plein air paint. And what do you do during inclement weather? Essie and I, she lives in Montreal. I live in Minnesota. You know, you live in Boston. Steve's lucky enough to live in a place where, you know, his winter time is 30 degrees. You know, mine's like 38 below. So
Yeah.
I can't go out some days. So yeah, what about you, Mark or Steve? What do you guys do indoors in the winter?
I mostly paint indoors. I know it maybe look like because of the videos I do a lot of plein air, or plein air, but I know, right? I've gotten so much grief over that. But I mostly paint indoors. You kind of piece together ideas. I guess that comes from my illustration years. Mark, you can talk to that too, but you know, when you do illustration, you know, you don't go have any place, you know, unless it's something special, you don't have any place you can go to go out and draw something. You start collecting reference, and that's what you do. You take your own pictures, you collect your own reference, you go, if you're worried about copyright, you go to stock photography sites, or you redraw something that you found, and it's like it's a reference collecting thing. So decide what you want to paint, start drawing, and start collecting reference for it.
Yeah, I think for me, I generally work indoors, but I like to go to places. Like, I love drawing in coffee shops. I love drawing. I'll go to a different town and I'll go to their local library just to explore, and you know, find a space there to just draw and create there. You know, where I live on a lake, and you know, we have a nice dock on the lake, so I have a chair down there where I can go down and just sketch down there, which is nice. But in the winter time, no, it's too much to bring everything outside. And you know, the recent review you did, Steve, of the case, I forget the name of the case that you did.
That's your satchel.
Yeah, I loved I love the magnetic thing that you did with the you know, to attach things. I thought that was just genius. And but again, in wintertime, unless you know, it's a really nice mellow wintry day, the only thing I'm going to do is if I drive by a nice scene that I think would make a good reference shot, I'll get out and take a picture, but I'll bring it home and, you know, I'll work on that off of my reference library.
I did a video on mock plein air. I don't know if either of y'all saw that one, but it's I have a studio monitor here over my desk.
Oh yeah,
I can see certain camera shots, but I also can watch YouTube or Netflix or stuff. But if you go on YouTube, there are a ton of scenic sites. That all they do is for 3 hours they show scenes. In fact, there's one, I can't remember the name of the channel, but they're starting to do hikes, like 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour hikes through wooded areas, and you can freeze frame any of those on your screen and pretend you're outdoors doing sketching, or even do it right from your, you know, you do it on an iPad, do it right from your drawing table.
They have that for figure sketching too. So they'll have nude models.
That's right.
Posing
That's right.
for, and I use that sometimes. And I also go to a live sketching class every week at the Art Academy here in St. Paul. But one thing I do is I just formed a group called the Underground Artists League. It's just a bunch of us sketchers, and we get together at a coffee house every week. And during the winter, it's nice to get out of the house and go to the coffee house and be around people and the energy you feel at a place like that. And we'll just pick a different coffee house or venue every week, and we just go sketch.
I took my sketchbook to my daughter's dental appointment, and I just sat, you know, any dentist office has got like stacks of magazines.
Yes.
So I had a watercolor sketchbook, and I started flipping through magazines, and I would doodle from that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That's what I do. And I mean, you know, sketching, what's brilliant about sketching, and I'm primarily, I'd say, a sketch artist at this point in my life, but what's brilliant about it is I don't have to, I'm not worried about a finished work. I can just go and have fun and, you know, sketch whatever the heck I want. And I don't have to worry about it. And at the end of the day, sometimes I look back and 1 out of 10 of those sketches will be decent. You know, it's hopefully getting to 2 out of 10 eventually after 47 years, but I'm working on that.
I will say
But,
also, one other thing that I do is I love the idea of this, the websites for, or the YouTube channels for, you know, the hiking and stuff like that. But I went to, on my honeymoon, we went to Greece, and it's gorgeous there. And one of the islands we went to was Santorini. Recently, I was going to do a video on it, but it just seemed too complicated. So I said, I'm not going to bother, but maybe I'll do it. I don't know. But going on Google Maps and going to Street View, I was actually able to go to Santorini and go to the beach we went to and see the parking lot and everything. And, you know, it's amazing the things you can see from Google View. I can go to Paris. I can go to Minnesota. It's like those street views are worth checking out.
Great
That
idea.
goes in the same breath. You crazy, man.
Yeah.
I can go to Paris or Minnesota. There's no, I mean,
it's very interesting.
You're cracking me up, Mark. All right, let's back up a couple here because we got a couple questions coming in. Okay, so a person was asking, and I want to find this comment again, but basically she was asking, you know, what do I, should I start with expensive paints and stuff? And, you know, it's like, you know, versus cheap ones. And, you know, I always like to, because I get this question a lot on my channel because everybody wants to know what art supply should I use as I'm just starting out. There's like 2 types of artists. There's artists who collect stuff. And then, you know, and I do it too. I got more art supplies than I'll ever use in a lifetime. But, and then there are those that actually want to use it, you know, put it to practice. I recommend the second one because, you know, you'll find your joy in that. But I like to tell people, you can paint a masterpiece with a humble number 2 pencil. I mean, you know, when I was growing up poor, my mom didn't buy, you know, art supplies for us. And, you know, we had to struggle to make ends meet. So, you know, I just had to learn how to draw on, you know, notebook paper and a number 2 pencil. But that said, you know, like if you're an ice hockey skater, and you'll probably appreciate this, Mark, because you live in Boston where the Bruins are. But if you're an ice hockey skater and you buy the really super lightweight skates and the composite stick and the lightweight gear, will that shave 1/100th of a second off your game and help you score a goal or 2 per season more? Maybe. But so that's like when people ask me, should I spend $300 on a watercolor brush? Will it make me a better artist? Probably not. I mean, I don't know where you're at on that, Steve, but
Well, where I am on that is that first of all, you have to be good enough to know the difference, and that's, you know, it's like you know, how do I even say it? If you're a beginner, you're not gonna be able to tell the difference yet, you know, between a $300 brush and a $20 brush, you know, one that's sufficient. And in reality, like you said, there may not be 1/1,000,000th of a degree difference. But if you've painted for hours and hours and years, and you've perfected a style, and one brush brings one little extra iota of something to your stroke, you'll know it. But if you're a beginner, you're not gonna. You know, the one exception I have in watercolor is the paper.
yes, paper makes
I'm kind of a stickler on that because paper is the foundation, and you can fudge a little on the brushes, you can fudge a little bit on the paint, but when you paint with cheap paper, and you can do it, you know, and it's not that bad, but actually the irony is that if you to paint on cheaper paper, you actually have to be a better painter than you do to paint on expensive paper because of the way it handles the water and the paint and the washes. So it's kind of reverse, you know. And as a beginner, beginners easily get frustrated, especially with a medium like watercolor. They start painting on cheap paper and they're going to say, I can't do anything on this stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Whereas you may be
It'll
able to
be
easily
discouraging.
do the right thing,
Yeah.
you know, on great paper. So the paper is a little different, but
You know, on my channel, I did a video a while ago. It was called "Why No One's Buying Your Cheap Art," and what it addresses is not about, you know, that your art is cheap. It's just that when my attitude has always been, and this is what I used to teach. I used to teach at college in Boston here, and one of the things I used to teach students was, you can go to the dollar store and you can spend $8 on art supplies, but the work you're probably going to create is worth $8. Whereas if you spend, you don't have to spend the bank on your art supplies, but spend time researching and understand that it's not going to make you a better artist like you guys just explained. But there's something intangible that happens when you spend a lot of money on art supplies. We tend to value them higher. I know for me, I'm trying to figure out where it is now. It's over there somewhere. But hold on.
You mean the artist, Mark? Because people never ask me like, hey, what supply did you use to paint that? They either go, hey, that's pretty crappy, or when are you going to burn that because I want to come over to your house and see the fire, or can I buy that for $17 or whatever, you know what I mean?
But I will say this, when I bought this is the Schminke paints that you know, that were offered at the special deal, and I've kind of customized the set. I don't know if you can see that or not, but
oh yeah,
this when I got this in the mail, it actually sat on my desk for about a month, several weeks. I didn't want to touch it. I was very tentative about even putting a paintbrush on that because it cost a lot of money, and I was nervous about actually using it. I didn't know if I was going to be able to handle the Schminke, you know.
And when you you opened it, your face glowed and your hair started blowing back, right?
It's like
that's exactly what happened, Steve. I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly. It's the same thing when you open up a tube of M-Gram. Oh, hallelujah! You know the angel
voices coming from above, and
yeah.
But for me, what was funny is I bought a $20 plus or minus Sakura watercolor field kit. It comes with a water brush. It comes with all this stuff, a palette and everything. And I loved it so much, I went and bought another one. I blew through the first one, you know, on a trip I took. And the newer one that I have stays in my travel kit. That's out of my car right now. So the M-Grams, the Schminkes, and all the other stuff I have, the Winsor Newtons, are here in my studio. And, you know, my attitude is if you buy expensive equipment, for me, I'm a musician too. If I buy a cheap $20 guitar, it's not going to hold the tune and the value of what I want to put into it. Whether I can play it or not, it's not going to produce good quality sound. But if I go and buy a C.F. Martin guitar for $1,000, you know the sound, even if you're just learning, is going to be consistent and it's going to be great. So with art supplies, it's the same thing. I feel like, you know, you're going to value those supplies more if you put a little bit more money into it than, say, the dollar store or just cheaper brands.
Yeah, that's a good outlook. Yeah.
Couple questions here, and then we can probably wrap up. But someone's asking me, when is my next video coming out? Just because I just haven't done one in like a month. So
yeah, Marty.
Yeah, I know. Get off the.
Marty's going to be bungee jumping from, you know, a skyscraper.
You know, the problem with that is, like, I'm a 50-year-old, 50-some-year-old man now. It like if I do one of my stupid stunts, it takes me like 3 weeks to recover, and I can't do jack between. It's a good thing I got a desk job because I'd be screwed if I had to work a real job. Okay, so here we go. So I'm gonna put a video out probably within the next week, and it's gonna be looking at the Hahnemühle. You want to say it Hahnemühle? I don't know.
Hahnemühle.
Yeah, Hahnemühle, the paper, and Steve has done a review of the paper, and they've contacted me, asked me to do the same thing. Probably won't be like my Stonehenge Aqua review where I brought it to the car wash. But it'll be interesting. I'm hoping it'll be somewhat compelling, and
Yeah.
I'll get that out soon. And I'm going to try some paints that Anna Muir sent me. She sent me some Jackson. I think they're called Jackson paints from Europe. So I have never tried those, so I'm going to try those out.
Good. There's
Now,
a
here's
question.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want
how
to
to
grab this
simplify.
question here.
Sure.
Steve, if you use cheap paint and great paper, then your paper will outlast the paint, right? I got the LE Schminke set, the limited edition. Well, I never said use cheap paint, okay? But you can fudge on the paint. There are different qualities of paint, and not necessarily. I mean, it's there are paints that are student grade that are still light fast, and that's really the only thing you need to be concerned about with lasting. And I'm not so concerned with lasting as I am learning, because that's where the question comes up the most is, as a beginner, I can't afford expensive paper. I get that question all the time. You know, I say, and this kind of goes with what you were saying, Mark, buy the best supplies you can afford, okay? That's usually where it comes down to, is affordability. But if you have to compromise, compromise on, I would say, the brushes. Well, don't compromise on the paper unless, you know, you just are broke. Don't compromise on the paper. Compromise on the paint. And lastly, well, compromise on the brushes first and the paint last.
Yeah. And here's a little secret for folks too. First of all, if you see a watercolor painting in a gallery that's more than 75 or 100 years old, I promise you, I guarantee you 100% it's been retouched and repainted by conservators. Watercolor paint of that era didn't last that long. And even the current watercolor paint, under gallery conditions, you might get 75, 100 years out of. But if you're doing stuff in a sketchbook, don't even worry about it, because the sketchbook's going to remain closed for eons or however long it is, and you know, we'll long be dead and no one will care. Yeah. So, you know, just do what you want.
Yeah, and absolutely, if you are doing work that's being hung and sold and needs longevity, then yeah, you should be using top quality artist supplies.
The best. So
it's really just more of a question of affordability for beginners, that, you know, we constantly deal with that, you know, what are the supplies that I need to buy? And it's, to me, it's always buy the best you can afford, but compromise in that order, you know.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Question here: how to simplify the clutter in a plein air situation? Maybe better addressed visually in a video, but I have a hard time getting started. And I think I know what John's talking about. What he's talking about, and you've addressed this before, Steve. Like, maybe there wasn't a video about it, but you alluded to it. You alluded to it when you were doing your video. And that really is composition, and what to pick out, what elements to select in a particular scene.
Yeah.
And I don't know, John, if you have the little, you can buy you probably know the name of it, Steve, I've forgotten now, but it's the box.
Yeah.
What do you call that thing? A window? Or
there's two of them. There's a viewfinder one. It's called the zoom finder is the one I like, because you can have two different formats.
Right.
And it's a white one. And you can not only crop a live scene, but you can also crop a photo. I'm trying to remember the name of the other one. I got it sitting right here.
That's what I use in my oil painting practice. I don't, it's similar to that. But what I do is, if you don't have that, you know, John, you can just go like this, you know.
Yeah, you can do that.
You know, if you want to save a few bucks.
This is the view catcher. And it's just, you know, you can make something like this. In fact, I did a video where I showed how you could just take a cheap mat board and cut the corners and clip it together. And like you said, Marty, a lot of people for years have been doing that, but this kind of puts a mat around it. This one has a little hole, so you can isolate a color that may be difficult to perceive. I don't like this as well, though, as I like the zoom finder. The zoom finder has two different aspect ratios. and
Yeah.
it will enlarge. This you can't enlarge. It will enlarge and shrink, so you can also crop down on photos or in a live scene.
Or you can take a picture, crop it, and then paint from your photograph. The other thing, John,
Yep.
just a quick tip for trying to get composition is concentrate a little bit on negative space. I noticed that when I was starting out, if I concentrated more on the negative space, that would help. And that's the space around your primary object in your composition.
Great tip. Great tip.
Yeah, that can be helpful for you. What's your recommendations for framing for watercolor exhibition for a new artist? P.S. I hope my question was in the right format. Thanks anyway. Runa, great question. Yeah, I think Val sort of addressed this in the chat room, but I don't know about you, Steve. Do you have a Michaels where you live, Steve?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes
Michaels,
they give a
40%. Hobby Lobby. We have all
right.
of them.
40% coupon, right?
Yeah.
I go there. There's sometimes buy a frame, a $40 frame. It comes to like 18 bucks.
Yeah.
Or just an $18 frame that comes to $6, whatever.
Right.
I'm not spending a fortune. If the person wants to take my work out of that frame and reframe it in a fancy frame with museum glass, more power to them. I'm a broke artist. I can't afford to be framing stuff in $400 frames.
The challenge comes is if you paint first and then frame later, and you end up having to frame to a custom size. Right. But if you don't want to spend that kind of money, or you can't frame yourself, that's the other thing, is you can try doing your own framing, but it requires some expensive supplies there. But if you plan backwards, buy the frames and then the mats, and then kind of work backwards to the area that you paint. And
that's a great tip.
And then you can paint to those sizes, those stock sizes. And like Marty said, you can get them dirt cheap.
What do you do, Mark?
It's a little embarrassing.
What's all that behind you?
What's that?
What's all that behind you? You got a lot of work hanging up there.
That's picture. You know what? I'm a big fan of investing in a good frame. I don't mind spending that extra money if I know it's going to make the picture or the photograph or whatever it is look better. What you see up there, I mean, this like point like this, that collage piece there is just family photos. That was, I think, at Target or something. But I have a custom framer here where I live. But I will say this: I'm a big IKEA fan. And if you ever go to IKEA, I love IKEA. Yeah. What I did at IKEA was I was walking through one day, and they had this long frame. It was like a 40-inch frame, I guess, or something like that. And in it, they had 5 Picasso prints. Yeah. And I thought, oh, this is beautiful. I'm going to buy this. And, the question was, why do you want to have Picasso hanging on your wall? I said, I don't. I'm actually going to take the Picassos off and put my own work in there. And that's what I did. And so hanging in my living room is, this $40. It was literally a $40 frame, but it's got 5 pieces in it, and they're floating on top of the mat, and it's beautiful. And you'd think it was a much more expensive piece. So,
the other thing you can do is go to a thrift store. Like I found this beautiful frame around an antique picture, and it wasn't a very good one. It wasn't worth much, but this frame is worth a lot to me. I mean, I think this frame is beautiful, and it's just the right size, if you got a 9x12. So the thrift store, the Goodwill, whatever charity shop you have in your area, are great places to score deals on old frames.
Yep. We have a lot of yard sales around here too. So
yeah,
yard sales are great. I've come across so many great frames at yard sales, and I've ended up giving them away to people because I bought them for 50 cents. But
and if you don't like the Velvet Elvis that's in the frame, you can just pop that out, and
no, not the Velvet Elvis. Don't throw that away.
As much as I love the dogs playing cards, I want the frame, But yeah, you know, those are great ideas and great places to go.
I bought
this has been fun, guys.
I bought I'll just say this and then we ought to close. Bought a frame at a thrift store. Just like you said, it had a picture of all these basset hounds in a row.
Yeah, sure.
And, you know, I was buying it for the frame like you, Marty. I had no interest in it. It was a bad photo. It was badly exposed. It was kind of out of focus. But, you know, so whoever took it thought it was cute. And the photo was even kind of faded. And I got it up to the counter to pay for it. And the lady goes, "Oh, that's so cute. You know, I loved that when it came in. I'm so glad someone bought it." I didn't have the heart to tell her it was immediately going in the trash bin.
Right.
So,
yeah, no, that's right.
Well, guys, this has been great. I've really enjoyed this. I think we ought to bring it to a close. And thank you, everybody out there, for watching, tuning in. And this will be recorded if any of you want to see it over or go back and see particular parts. Thank you very much, Mark. It was great to be able to introduce you to everybody and get to know you a little better. Thank you,
Go
Marty.
over, subscribe to Mark's channel.
Yep, I'll have that when this becomes an editable video. I'll put all the channel links down there. Thank you, Marty, for helping me out tonight.
Always, brother. Always.
And we will see everybody on the flip side in the next
Thanks
video.
to Val. We should mention Valerie too. She
Yes.
moderated the chat room for us all night.
Yes. Thanks,
Well, I just
Val,
want to say
very,
thank you
very
to you
much.
guys,
Always
too.
a big help.
Thank you to you guys for having me on board, and it's been a treat. I just had a blast. This was just so much fun. I immediately relaxed once we started. So
I knew you would.
that.
I knew you would.
And thank
All
you to
right.
the viewers who gave me their time, and thank you, Val. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.